call to order the regular meeting of the Tilton Planning Board for Tuesday, April 26, 2016. And read the agenda. First case is Planning Board Case 16-04. It's a continuation of a site plan review. It's a proposal to make necessary retrofits and operate an indoor children's playground at 388 Laconia Road in the Resort Commercial District. And I will turn it over to you, and I think we talked at length last time. You have some information to provide.
Hopefully tonight will be less lengthy. So we have the list of follow-up items, so if you don't mind, I just want to go through bullet by bullet.
That's fine, great.
So future expansion is the parking lot, so that's pretty much on hold at this point. We're not doing anything with that. So in my mind, that topic is closed for now. Stormwater up in front, I think Dari gave you some photos with a description of just making sure that we increase the small berm there, put some plants, grass, whatever, and just biannually clean up the sediment that rests there in the corner.
What kind of plantings do you have in mind?
And just whatever bushes that are just going to help keep anything from overflowing over there.
I think there's certain plants, that's why I was asking that are better than others, so.
Yeah, I think Derek and Dari are
Dari's going to help you with that, okay. All right. Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. So that's pretty much outlined in that photo there. Then snow storage, took that away from the wetland out back, and as far as I can tell, I think we'll be fine to just kind of push that up further up behind the hill. There's a spot in there where there are actually vehicles parked in that photo. Snow storage pretty much contained right there. It seemed like that was pretty much far enough away from the wetlands that are on the opposite side of the building. If you're looking at the aerial shot there to the right, yeah, exactly where you're, yes, yep.
Right here, right?
And then the last thing was the additional lighting for the back side of the building. On the building on the left, there's already lighting on the back of the structure. So we would just install a light on the back side of the building to the right as well.
All right, I'll open it up to the board. Any comments, observations?
I went by and I drove by the site and, yeah, I was happy to see it had some plantings already over there between, the parking lot and the stream, so, and it looks like they've got a plan for the rest of the lot, so. Looking good.
And you do have some curbing.
Yeah, and I took some pictures of the curbing.
You did.
Yeah, it was a little bit damaged in one area in the front, but I'm sure you've seen it. But you can always replace it.
And I would suggest you work with Dari on the plants that would
Absolutely.
be water
Yep.
absorbing and deep rooted. Just no Japanese knotweed. Oh, no, it's very invasive.
I know.
Oh, okay.
It's the only plant that I know that made the front page of the Citizen. Remember when there was the big article in the Citizen? Towns are having so much trouble with it because it's so invasive.
You know, it is considered a Lyme disease cure.
Oh, really?
And New Hampshire has the highest incident of Lyme disease of any state in the country. I agree with
Well,
most
maybe
not
somebody,
me too.
maybe somebody moved it in for that reason, you
Either
think?
that or you can drink a lot of wine,
Yeah.
red wine.
All right, are there any other comments or questions?
Well, I wasn't here last week, but I thought I read you're only gonna be using one of these buildings?
To start, yeah.
Is it the one away from the snow storage or the one next?
That's the one that you're pointing to right now.
Next,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Is this vacant, like,
Yeah.
nothing's in there at all?
It's a storage building.
One thing I will bring up is that, as you know, the plan was to go to the Conservation Commission, but since they're not gonna do any expansion to the rear, it was found that the Conservation Commission, I guess, didn't need to see them. They would like to see them, I guess, this next week, but it's nothing that would hold up our approval of the plan.
Is there marked parking spots in here? Or you just park along here?
What was the question? Are there
Marked parking
No,
lot
we'll have
spots?
that on.
Okay. Do you know how many you're gonna have, parking lot spots?
There were 11 or 12.
Yeah, we went
Came up
through
with
all of
one,
that
too.
information. What she's coming up with tonight are the things that we had questions about that were left up in the air. Okay. All right, I'm satisfied. Anybody else want to bring anything else up, Catherine?
No, I'm happy, it's good,
Okay.
it's good.
I'll entertain your motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve planning board 16-04.
okay, and,
Second.
all in favor?
Discussion?
Any discussion?
I just think we should note in this approval, continue to note that once they, start to move into the, or want to move into the second building, it will require an updated site plan.
All right, and the other thing is the, they need to see the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
If they expand the parking
If they
lot.
expand.
No, they need to see them anyway. I thought they wanted to see you.
Only if,
I don't know.
only if they expand the parking.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, the chairman said, we don't, it's not urgent that we see them, but if they could come to next month's meeting, that would be great, just so they know what's coming. I think the gist of it was that they want to see them before any expansion takes place, whether it's next month or 6 months from now, I imagine isn't
Okay.
vital.
All right.
That's what I gathered.
Then all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
So I'll
Me
get that with
too.
some plans to you.
Great.
Yeah, okay, all right, great.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Next on our agenda is Jeremy.
Yeah.
Well, we have this application, we need this.
We're gonna talk about that later.
Actually,
You wanna
glad you
talk-
mentioned that. Well, Jeremy's, we may just need a few minutes while Jeremy gets that set up, and I'm gonna call the gentleman who submitted this, and maybe I told him to come at 7:30, but maybe let him know he should come at, what, 7, a little after 7, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
depends on how much we talk.
Yeah,
Jeremy's
he's a talker.
presentation.
That would be rude and condescending, we wouldn't do that.
We haven't got much
Lucky,
more time to pick on her.
I know.
Yes. Let them get away with it.
How long you in here for?
Final is-
A little bit longer. I was pretty slow.
Oh, you're gonna get
I
rid of
thought
us
you were
already?
pretty good. Not those.
Hi.
We've already had our first case. We didn't wait for you. We thought you would bring supper, but you didn't.
I didn't have time.
He is about to, right?
I would've.
Those wings.
Do you need darkness or?
Sorry.
There you go. I've had them hit a couple times now.
Accessory dwelling.
Really big on it.
Did everybody get the email that Dari sent out on the conference coming up in June 4th?
You see much change in it? I saw maybe one.
I always like to go to get the latest legal stuff that's taking place.
Yeah, that was one of them. There was like. not
Basics for the
agriculture,
planning
but-
board. Hopefully we'll get some new members before then.
Yeah, how many are we short? Just
Anybody?
one? Two?
Anybody?
Two.
Two meetings?
You have no alternate.
There's under a few rocks.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, it's already called to the account.
What?
Oh, what's that?
What?
Things are moving along tonight, so
Wait,
I was gonna say,
Sorry.
that's the car guy.
I just saw the overhead picture of it.
She complied with, this one. She complied with what we wanted her to, and
Plants
she's good to
here,
go.
and we returned it with
and
some
a
items
slate right
marked on
there.
it. I misplaced that, so if you don't mind,
She's going forward and making whatever she's
okay,
making.
that's no problem, I'll have it.
Bouncy house.
Playground.
And there was this big document thing about
Okay.
watershed or something,
Okay.
and you
I
said,
asked
When
them,
she-
should they
Take a
took
look
care
at
of
this.
I
that?
did,
When
yeah,
you go
yeah.
into the big.
That everyone's got one of
office.
those in their hands, so.
and that's it.
Okay, great.
They'll have to
What
become
was it?
creative, I
See you
think.
soon,
Just trying
thanks.
to remember what it was.
Okay.
I didn't even find out the first time that it
It was a
was.
lot of
That's a
things.
trailer back there?
Oh,
They're gonna have to
okay.
come
It
to
wasn't
me.
anything violent.
Oh, okay, all right.
It wasn't
I, the way you said it,
putting,
it
it wasn't serious. They
They're
were-
gonna have a hard time. I can't go back,
I'll tell you later what we did on that.
even if I was in this place, seldom because it's wet.
Built a bridge.
And I wouldn't say no.
Get that one.
You could have parking in your field for $20 a car.
But I don't think so.
$50 a car?
Yep, trying to get the kids out of it so I can.
No, I have to obviously.
I still see the office.
Oh, yeah.
That's hard enough.
You came up from there?
I don't realize that's a restaurant.
Yeah, we're all set.
I guess, I'll just quickly, for those, has everyone met Jeremy?
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
Jeremy's a senior at Winnisquam Regional High School. He's interested in pursuing law, education in law. I've had the good fortune of working with him for the last couple months. He's been helping out in the office. And as a sort of a signature project, he's going to help us sort of tackle this topic of accessory dwelling units. As some of you know, a bill recently passed the Senate. Jeremy will tell you more about that. But it really puts the topic of accessory dwelling units into the hands of all planning boards in the state. And so we'll be working on this next year. And luckily, we're going to have this presentation tonight that'll help get us all on the same page with a certain level of knowledge about the topic. But again, Jeremy's been a big help, and looking forward to having him for another couple of weeks before he moves on. He'll be obviously going to college next year. But without further ado, Jeremy, take it away.
Thank you, Daria. So as you can probably read on the screen, this presentation kind of revolves around accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units are an item that revolves around a bigger problem that has been affecting New Hampshire and other communities. See, New Hampshire seems to have not a very large share of seniors. If you actually look at the chart, it seems we fall into the 15 to 20% category, which isn't that, it's not that massive, except this statistic is a little deceptive. We have an aging population. We have more and more older people staying and coming here, and we have more and more younger people leaving. There's 20% senior population above 65, but this is a deceptive number because there's another 10% of people around the age of 60 to 65. So we don't have an overaged population yet, but give it 5 years. And with an older population becomes the demands of an older population. Older generations may want to age in place. They're going to leave behind jobs that they used to have that are pertinent in keeping the communities together. They might need caregivers or some sort of medical attention, and most importantly, they need a youth population. The youth population, when they're looking, they need a place that's right to build a family because they have the intent to start a family, and they need housing options that are affordable. Unfortunately, in New Hampshire, that seems to not be the case. New Hampshire has an average of 222, I'll just round that off, 227,000, I'm messing up now. And then the median housing costing is 180,000. So if someone's looking state-wise and national-wise in order to find housing, they might not choose New Hampshire, even if they were brought up in New Hampshire. And that brings us to the housing environment in New Hampshire. As you can see around this local areas have larger houses. They were built in a time where more and more young people, or more and more families had more young people, they had more children, so the houses themselves had to be larger. Lands that are currently unused are protected by conservation efforts, which essentially means that we can't touch them or it'd be very hard to do anything with them. And then the solution comes to accessory dwelling units. I've heard a lot of people say in-law apartments. I think I'm too young for that term. But I've heard a lot of people say that and mention it, so maybe that'll give you an idea of what it is. It's an area inside of another area that someone can live. And think of it as when I went to the workshop, Ben Frost was explaining, think of it like a castle and where the servants lived, except this time it's not a servants, it's Dave from across the street. And it has to be smaller than a primary unit, but the most important part is it's cheaper housing. And there are two different kinds of accessory dwelling units. There are detached, which you can see here, the house is not attached in any way to the property. And right here we have an attached or interior household, which if you can't see, right there typically would be upstairs of the garage where someone would be living. You couldn't really tell that it was an accessory dwelling unit just by looking at it. So who can accessory dwelling units bring help to? Well, the first one is an older individual who wants to live in a house that they've lived in for most of their lives. These individuals may start to need more money coming in. They cannot live in these larger houses with the amount of income that they have. So with a few small modifications, they can move their house into being a house that can have someone live as an accessory dwelling unit. So now that person has a cheaper place to live, and they themselves have a separate sort of income. The second example, an elderly family member takes a turn for the worse. They can't take care of themselves, whether it's physical disabilities or mental disabilities, and they need someone to take care of them. They can either have an accessory dwelling unit in their house and have a younger relative move in or a caregiver move in, or the family themselves can make a accessory dwelling unit out of their own home and the elderly person can live. But the most important person that accessory dwelling units can help is me. I'm planning on attending the University of Louisville, but in order to live on campus, it is expensive. It's about the same price of actually going to the college. So I found out that the laws in Kentucky are very similar to the new laws that are going to be passed with this Senate bill. So essentially, I'm able to live in my uncle's backyard for very cheap, and I can actually attend college outside of state. So Senate Bill 146 will come into law in June 2017. Towns must allow each single-family household one dwelling unit, and that's important because that comes up multiple times. And ADU regulation, we can either allow them by right, which any person can just make an accessory dwelling unit as long as they follow the standards, special exception, and conditional use. As you see, there are pros and cons to allowing by right. It's easy for families to start accessory dwelling units. Regulation from other facets of the bill might be enough to regulate it, and people will be more compelled to build legally if their set of laws and process that they have to follow is a lot less difficult to go across. But planning boards may want to know about every single ADU that comes in for some reason or another, so you wouldn't really get that if you allow it by right. And here we have conditional use permit, which would be the planning board, or special exception, which is the zoning board. So the pros of that is every board gets to view every accessory dwelling unit, like we said before, and every accessory dwelling unit will be known by the board. The cons, however, is it contributes in increasing smaller cases that have to be observed, creates a longer wait period for those of whom who want to make an accessory dwelling unit, new forms and new processes have to be created, and it requires more time to be dedicated to meetings which could be used in master planning and regulatory provision. Dory said that would get some too. So we're going to delve into a couple of the topics that are dealt with Senate Bill 146. Mind you that Tilton currently has zero regulation on pretty much any of this when it comes to accessory dwelling units. So everything we essentially had to start from scratch and compare it to other places, but there's a handful of places in New Hampshire that have that regulation, so we've had to look everywhere. The point is, there's a lot of stuff. And so the first thing that we have to look at is septic. And like we said, houses here are older, and some of the septic systems were made for one household or one family, so that may create a problem. Well, we found the problem pretty quickly in looking at Auburn's zoning amendments, which says septic system of an accessory dwelling unit shall be shown to meet the loading requirements of the single-family dwelling unit to which it is attached, plus the accessory dwelling unit. I didn't give multiple options because I feel like that's open and shut. Parking, and it's no secret that on-street parking is going to increase as we add more accessory dwelling units because more people are going to be living in the units themselves. And currently we require 2 parking spots per living units. Nothing else matters. It's 2 spots no matter what. So we have 2 solutions. No additional parking spots required. Chichester does this, and I haven't found any sort of complaints that they have. And essentially, we're just saying that by limiting the amount of people that can live in a house or an accessory dwelling unit, we're limiting the property enough. And the second is we uphold the parking regulations and have landowners have 2 spots per ADU. So if you have 1 ADU in your backyard, you now have to have 4 spots. And now we have a big problem, which is aesthetic. Senate Bill 146 mentions that we're not required to, but we may be required to adhere to aesthetic appeal. So we have different forms of aesthetic appeal. We have a house like this, which is already aesthetically pleasing, might not be any of your tastes, which is kind of the problem when you talk about aesthetic appeal. And then we have a matching, which you see a lot in this area, where a barn has been turned into a housing unit. And that will work in areas like this, where we have barns that aren't really in use anymore. And then there's the tiny house movement, which we were talking about how we wanted youth to come in. Youth have fallen for the trend of the tiny house movement, which is essentially making one house in one room and making it very space efficient. And it looks something like that most of the time. That's actually where I'm going to, not that specific one, but that's what I'm going to be living in when I'm going to college. So some people here might think that, well, aesthetic appeal doesn't matter, but I actually kind of wanted to force this one home because I found this example of a non-compliant household. This is an accessory dwelling unit. Because there's no zoning regulation, because they're in the same lot, it's considered an accessory dwelling unit, it doesn't have any limits to how close it has to be, how far away it is, or anything of the sort. So if you don't want to regulate it, you might end up stuck with that, but I'm not trying to sway your decisions. And then I came up with the proposed solution. Detached dwelling units should appear as accessory units maintaining aspects of color, architectural design, or materials. So you don't have to go along with this, but do I have to go back to the last slide? And here's another issue that we found with Senate Bill 146. Senate Bill 146 is worded that every single family household, we must allow them to have 1 accessory dwelling unit. And we also want to allow detached units because, like we said, the tiny house movement and more people want to live in dwelling units like that. So here's the problem. We have 2 households on 1 parcel. Enjoy my artwork. And each household could technically have 1 accessory dwelling unit. So if they had 2 accessory dwelling units, right here we have a very filled up parcel of land. And this parcel of land typically wouldn't have been allowed by previous laws, but it's technically going to fall through as a loophole if we allow detached dwelling units, which we don't have to, by the way. But we want to keep detached dwelling units because that's one of the things bringing youth in. So the solution that we found is any single-family household sharing its lot with another single-family household shall not be permitted to construct a detached dwelling unit. So we're basically allowing any single-family household that's alone on the lot to have 1 accessory dwelling unit. Any household that's not on that lot, or any household that has 2 on the lot, they cannot have it. But they can still have attached because we're required to allow them to have attached. And then we get into the conversation of attached versus detached, which took up longer than I'd like to admit through research. And there's zero definition of New Hampshire or even America or anywhere about what it is. And that creates a problem. Because let's look at this house. Right here we have the original house, we have the accessory dwelling unit, a detached unit. No, we don't. So here we have a breezeway that's connecting the 2. So do we count this breezeway as a connector? Do we count this as an attached household or a detached household? So it took a lot of time and effort to come up with a solution, but the solution lies within Senate Bill 146 that says all attached dwelling units must be attached by an interior door. A detached dwelling unit is defined by whether or not it can be attached with an interior door. An unconditioned breezeway does not count as a connector for an interior door, but a conditioned breezeway does. So essentially what we're saying with that is a breezeway can count as a connector, but on that last one, it's not interior connector. So it would have to be similar to a mudroom, more akin to a mudroom, or kind of a passageway between 2 houses rather than a breezeway. And then we have the issue of occupancy. And we're allowed to limit the amount of individuals who occupy an ADU. And the solutions for this one became less and less apparent as we came onto it. Number one is certain places with accessory dwelling units have acknowledged that limiting the amount of people is as easy as regulating size. So basically what that's saying is by regulating the size and the amount of bedrooms you might have in an accessory dwelling unit, that alone is enough to limit the amount of people living in a dwelling unit. Second is limit occupancy by bedroom, and this is actually something that Ms. Dawson could help us with because it's a health thing. We need to find out how many people can live in a certain area, and we need to find out essentially why we should limit something and whether or not that'd be a good thing to do health-wise. So in here we have a very bad joke. Basically, a big issue that's been pressed is that a lot of people seem to think that accessory dwelling units, once sold, will end up be turning into condos or condominiums. And there's actually explicit rules within Senate Bill 146 saying that it cannot become a timeshare or any other form of ownership. It can only be owned by one individual. You cannot split the parcel of land separating two dwelling units. That accessory dwelling unit is by all means part of the house, and you can't do anything with it. You have to sell it as a house. And then we come to the issue of size. Senate Bill 146 says all the ADUs cannot be required to be smaller than 750 square feet. So you can't require them to be smaller than it. They can be as big as you want them to be. We figured that 1,000 square feet limiting would give sufficient space without making the ADUs too large, meaning that you can make an accessory dwelling unit around 1,000 square feet to 750 square, or it can actually be smaller than 750 square feet, my bad. But it can essentially, we're limiting the size based off the square footage. And other considerations that we may have to, or may want to imply is that places like Auburn limit accessory dwelling units by percent, meaning it can only be the size 75% of the primary dwelling unit. And I stress this again because it needs to be reworded. The push for accessory dwelling units is so youth can come into New Hampshire and our communities and have an affordable living, and the older generation can have younger people coming in to fill up their jobs. Keep this in mind when you're talking about solutions or possible anything possible relating to this, because that is the most important part, that we need to continue the flow of youth into New Hampshire. And to recap one more time, these are the things that shall be required and that you do have to regulate. 1, ADU per single family dwelling. They must have an interior door and attached dwelling units, must make adequate water and sewage systems, may not be restricted to under 750 square feet, may not require familiar relations, which we didn't touch on in this. Essentially, you can't make an accessory dwelling unit and require that everybody who's either living in the unit is related or everybody who lives in the unit is related to you. And you may not require the interior door to be unlocked. So you can't require that if, let's say, they're living in your attic or something like that, you can't require that their door remain unlocked on all time because that's kind of weird. And then you may not require separate septic systems for an ADU. So you cannot require it, but at the same time, we're having individuals come in who are going to be expecting the septic system, so they may say that this septic system isn't sufficient. And these are the things that may be required, which if you want to regulate, this is all your choice. You may regulate parking, you can require occupancy, owner occupancy of one unit. You cannot say which one's the primary unit, however. So you can't tell them that the bigger one's the primary and they have to live in that one. You can require that they live in one of them. You may deem certain ADUs as workforce housing, which we don't really need to get into as a town of Tilton. We may allow detached dwelling units. We may regulate aesthetic appeal, increase lot sizes for detached dwelling units, limit the number of unrelated individuals that occupy a single unit. We can change the process in order to get an accessory dwelling unit to be special exception or conditional use, and we may set a minimum size. And here's the point where I'm going to open the floor and hopefully have the answers to your questions.
I'll be
Yes.
first. You kept mentioning youth. They can be any age in these units, right?
Yes, I mean, assuming that they're old enough to buy a household,
Right.
then it's any age individual, assuming above the age of 18. I don't know if that's the.
Now those tiny houses, aren't they smaller than 750 square feet? You know, those ones for because I see them all over Facebook.
Yeah, and that's so when we say 750 square feet, we're saying we're not requiring them to make it under 750 square feet. they can, by all means,
Oh,
live in something
okay.
smaller than 750 square feet. But we can't demand it.
So, yeah, and so, in other words, if you say, the legislation says you can't probably just restating what Jeremy's saying, but you can't require that it be smaller than 750 feet. You can't require it. But if someone wants to do less than 750, they could.
Okay.
However, there may be some, in order to have all the amenities that are required for a dwelling unit through health code, they may, there may be some minimum threshold set through that.
I just want to make a comment, Jeremy. You keep bringing up the youth. One of the things I found out in looking at our aging population and what's going on is that younger people are not looking for 3 and 4 bedrooms.
Yes.
Older people at the current time have 3 and 4 bedrooms, and that's why it's become an issue. But if they could divide it and they live in one part of the house and offer a living unit for a young couple with 2 bedrooms, that would make
Yes.
the younger couple, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for 3 bedrooms anymore,
And
which
the
I
amount
found interesting, because when I was coming up to buying my first house, it had to be 3 bedrooms, it was, and that's not what young people are looking for.
And the amount of modifications we need to create an accessory dwelling unit within a house, it's very small. You just basically have to limit the area by 1 locked door, and which you could do that in a hallway if you really wanted to.
You don't have to have a kitchen.
Well, you do.
Yes.
It's,
Kitchen, bathroom,
But just
as long as they're equal, if that makes any sense, as long as they both have everything required by health code.
No.
Yeah. Essentially, if you could cut off that part of the house and it still be an acceptable living space, then yes.
So, maybe, so if I had a sink,
Yes.
right, I got my sink, I got my little propane butane stove right there, and I got a little refrigerator, is that classified as?
Well, you have 2 things going on. You have the state building codes, which there's a plethora of them, and then you have the health codes. So you have to have, the building codes require a kitchen, separate bathroom, and bedroom. Living and dining is optional. Those 3 you have to have separate. And you can't have, I don't know if you're talking about a little camper stove.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just talking like
Yeah.
like a camp stove.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow. Hot
What
plate.
kind of stove?
I mean, can I almost, when he showed me that mini house, I can go over to Home Depot and buy a couple of sheds, attach them, take out the middle wall, put a sink, make it regulation. Can that be my house?
As long as you have a separate bathroom, kitchen, and bedroom.
Damn, who needs a mortgage?
And the kitchen,
But remember, when he's talking tiny house, there's a whole movement, and it's out in the
Very
west
cool.
primarily now. But I think the Learning Channel has specials on tiny house living, and the do-it-yourself channels have it.
There's one on the way to Belmont.
Yeah, there's one in Sanberton. There's one in Sanberton.
They're very space efficient because I've
And
worked
there's a
at
lot
them
of
for
yurts
college.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've seen
pretty
I've seen some of those. The first part of it when you talked about renovation, it just, I was in the town I grew up in, and they used to have a thing where if you buy a small house, you knock it down, you build a bigger house, but you can still classify it as a renovation if you left one wall of the main original structure. And so I went by this house,
right.
and obviously they've closed that loophole, but this one house was the reason why they did that, because it was a tiny house. That wasn't, not a tiny house, but
Yeah.
it was 2 senior citizens that lived in this house, but they raised their children in the house, and then these people came in and they put this huge, 4,000 square foot house in, and all they did was leave the original wall that was between the garage and the living room, and that was
Right.
classified as a renovation.
They did a lot of that on the lake.
Yeah.
We tried our best to shut any of that down throughout, like the different solutions we offered.
Yeah.
We tried our best to make sure there was no loopholes, no way out of it. We had the list of rules and we had to follow them. And also not only in this jurisdiction, but within other areas too.
Yeah.
Whereas someone couldn't use the accessory dwelling unit as an exception to let's say before I had the houses with the detached dwelling units in the backyard, someone could live in one of those if we demand that, and then rent out the other ones as kind of a cheaper way of doing a motel type area.
Well, I could see a senior citizen, an elderly couple, building something in their yard and then, giving their house to their children or something.
Yeah, that's-
A younger
Yeah,
family.
That's something that happens.
Yeah. When we went down to Concord to the presentation, there was some really pretty, they gave us some really pretty examples of what can be done. And a lot of them, I'm sure that's what it was. It was probably an older couple who stayed in their house and let the kids live in the garage out back,
The
renovated
building
the
codes
front.
that the state of New Hampshire have adopted are gonna regulate a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
Especially if it's detached, it's gonna have to have smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, the heating plant, it can't rely on space heaters. And the space heater can't supplement the heat that a regular furnace is supposed to. They can be used to make it hotter, but the building code, it's interesting, says your furnace must be able to establish 68 degrees or better. But the house code says 65.
Come on in and join us.
It's fun.
You're probably just on time, at any
Just-
time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already had one case that came, and I don't think anybody else remembers it. I remember it, and I've already talked to the person who brought it here, because they were building a home, and they wanted their in-laws to be on the property, and what they wanted to do was a breezeway, but, we talked to them about that, but we have had one request already, about a year and a half ago, I
They
guess.
came to the planning board? Because that's allowed in the zoning, I'm surprised it didn't just go through the building inspector.
No, he wanted to just see what was allowed and what wasn't. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, excellent job.
It was very nice. Nice job. In fact, they even gleaned a little bit more information I did when I went down. to the
Yeah, I
building.
know. I know, and you're gonna have copies of all that for all of us?
Can you email us?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we'll get it out, yeah.
They didn't talk about the youth factor.
I know, funny how.
But when we went to, when we went to the, conference that was coming up, I sat in on one of those, it was
Oh.
excellent. Remember I
Oh,
talked to you
yes,
about having
yes.
the guy come and talk to us?
Yes, that's right.
Because he had a living chart of what was gonna happen.
Oh,
And it was really very frightening, wasn't it? Remember that?
No, I didn't go to it, but you told me.
It was really hitting me as an old person right between the eyes, I'll tell you.
They didn't make me think of it.
What? All right. Aldrina were mayors, used to be mayors, and it's now an Absolute Electric, and I think there's a beauty shop, a hair salon there. And I think now we have an application for a change of use. And, well, look at this to make sure everything is on here before I turn it over to you.
Do you have another one? What did you
Yep.
say that out?
I didn't,
Okay.
yeah.
Basically, the airport shuttle service wants to have a portion of it to do detailing of their cars when they come in. I assume it's the cars that are down at their normal location.
Correct.
They're gonna wash and detail the passenger vehicles, or a portion of that building. And who's the existing tenant who's not gonna be there?
Dick Mayer,
Oh,
and he's vacating that, if you wanna call it that garage spot. He's actually gonna sell off the equipment down there.
all right, this looks complete to me. if you'd like to talk to us a little more, and we may have some questions for you.
Sure.
Is this a conceptual or is this an actual
No,
review?
it's a change of use.
I mean, I view them, I guess, as essentially the same because,
Okay, I'm just a little confused because this isn't allowed in mixed use.
right, well, Mr. Saint, he'll speak to that. My thought was that this has a similar effect of a conceptual in that it's essentially an opportunity for the planning board to indicate to the applicant whether or not he'll need to do, what processes he'll need to do, site plan review or whatever.
Right, because this hasn't been advertised to a better.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Right. I just want to know how deep to go into it. And
Yeah.
No, we may have to do. Want to tell us what you
Yeah,
Not-
I had actually approached Richard Mayer a couple weeks ago in reference to, it's a one-stall garage. It's underneath the building on the right-hand side of the building. He currently uses it, or had been using it for Mayer's welding. Currently, right now, he has his truck in there and his welding equipment, but he's not utilizing anything going on there as far as business use. I've been looking for quite some time for a space to utilize during inclement weather and obviously off-season to detail our vehicles. We have roughly 10 to 12 airport vehicles that they need constant care all the time, inside and out. And so what I'm looking to do is to utilize that bay to detail the vehicles. So there is no automotive repair going on. None of that's going to take place. We're not changing oil. We're not doing any mechanical work. It's strictly washing a vehicle, detailing the inside of the vehicle. There's no harsh chemicals being used. A lot of the products that we use are biodegradable. We have to be very careful about what we use on the interior of our vehicles because of a lot of individuals have sensitivity to various chemicals. We have to be very careful about that. But that's primarily what I'm looking for. Dick Mayer has agreed, if this is approved, to lease that building to me. Not the building, I should say, that garage spot to me on an as-needed basis. Originally, we were talking about possibly being a prospective client to possibly purchase the building. But the current tenant, which is the electrical contractor that is there now, he is attempting to purchase the building.
where will your drain water go?
There is a floor drain in the bay of that building. My understanding from what Dick Mayer has told me, there is a catch basin that floor drains into, and that catch basin is in the back lot, adjacent to the parking lot.
And you're gonna do one car at a time.
Correct. The vehicles are not being stored there or parked there.
I saw that on
Yeah.
overnight.
It's strictly one car at a time. When they're done, the cars will go back to their current location. We're not using that as a parking depot or a dispatch center. It's strictly to detail vehicles. That's it. There's no signage. No one will even know we're there other than seeing our vehicle there. So we're not going to impact the traffic flow. We're not impacting the neighborhood in any way. There's no noise pollution. The typical detailing period is normal daylight hours. It may be at, say, 7 o'clock in the morning till, say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon would probably be the latest. But there's no work being done at night, typically not even during the weekend.
What kind of solutions do you use for washing?
It's a biodegradable, soluble solution that, it's a concentrated liquid that's obviously put into a bucket, and they're using that soap to, cleanse the outside of that vehicle. But there's nothing harsh, nothing that's gonna harm the environment.
Standard for the industry, sort of
Yeah,
something that you
yeah.
buy.
Yeah, we buy it commercially through a
commercially, sort
vendor,
of thing.
All right.
that they're utilized everywhere, excuse me?
So you're gonna use a bucket, you're not gonna have a high pressure nozzle spray?
No,
Okay.
that damages the paint.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's strictly hand wash
Oh,
out of a bucket
yeah.
with
Just
a
like
regular hose.
Probably spot
Okay.
washing.
Yeah, it's no different than you do in your car in your driveway, no different. Except
Eric,
that
did you have something?
I'm just trying to find out where the drain goes. It goes to a catch basin?
From what Dick Mayer has told me, that the drain leads to a catch basin, because I specifically asked him.
And where does the catch basin go?
In the river.
The catch basin leaches into the back of the land.
Does it go underneath the railroad tracks to the river, or does it go,
Excuse me?
does it go underneath the railroad tracks to the railroad tracks?
No, the catch basin is adjacent to his parking lot in the back of the building.
So is it a dry basin or does it drain to somewhere?
It's a dry basin.
Because floor drains, I don't believe, are allowed anymore in this state, unless they drain to a tank.
I don't know. I don't know how long that floor drain's been there.
Or when the last time he's used it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even know if it's got roots going through it or
No,
You don't-
floor drains were
doesn't work.
supposed to have been discontinued long ago. But this activity is not allowed in mixed use, that's in mixed use. So have we determined that the garage has been continued to be used? When he was doing welding, I know for a fact that he was repairing vehicles there too. He was installing trailer hitches on vehicles, so he's doing automotive.
I was gonna say, did my
So do
trailer
we
hitch?
know if that use has continued, and has he been actively looking for someone to continue that use? Because still, this is gonna be a change of use. But are we really looking at a change of use because it's automotive?
It's not automotive. Where do you get it's automotive?
You are taking cars in there to wash them.
Detailing.
Detailing, that's,
But we're not,
that's automotive, because when you wash them, all the oil and stuff is gonna wash off them in the salt.
no, we're not washing the engine. We're washing the outside of the vehicle. It's no different than if that car was parked out in the rain and the residue from the rain washed down on the ground.
Or John Scanlon washed his car, or the Sullivans washed theirs.
We're not steam cleaning the
Yeah,
engine, we're
totally.
not dumping any pollutants on the ground, so I'm sorry I don't agree with you.
Mrs. Johnson brought up the fact that you have 10 to 12 vehicles, which is true, but it's my understanding you're gonna bring them one at a time,
Correct.
and they're not gonna all be done every day, is that correct?
That's correct. It's hit or miss. I mean, a Monday may be busier than a Wednesday. So,
And detailing is rather time consuming.
yes, it's one guy. This isn't a crew of people. It's one gentleman that's doing it. So he may be working on a vehicle for 2 hours, another vehicle for an hour and a half, whatever. He may go through 4 vehicles in a day, on a good day. There might be another day where he only does a couple because that's all that needs to be done. This gentleman doesn't put in a 40-hour work week.
Do all of you know where the location is? Right across from the police station.
Well, it's up from the police department. It's up across from Grant. So, under automotive, it says car wash, and that's not allowed in mixed use.
Yes.
So, I'm back to my same question.
I don't know, is it technically,
He's washing cars.
well, I mean, just because he's washing cars, I wouldn't put it in the same as a car
What is
wash.
mixed use and
Because they have,
What else would you call it? He
High
brings his
pressure.
vehicles into a place that he's renting and he's washing
or
it.
the post office?
yes,
So, none of these cars are gonna have oil leaks or, you know, they're not
it's
gonna
not
be
a,
leaking.
I wouldn't put it the same as a commercial car, it's more like if somebody's privately washing their cars.
It's not residential, it's commercial. What else can it be?
Yeah,
It's not residential. This is a commercial use.
right.
it's a car, he's renting the space to wash
Right,
cars.
technically you
so
are right, yes, technically, yes.
The public may not be washing their cars there,
Right.
but this is going to be used as a car washing facility.
But the question is, has that been used as a business continuously? I guess
For
that's. the-
automotive use, or,
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess, just some
That's a
food
good
for
answer.
thought when answering that question is, you know, let's ask ourselves, what are the criteria for abandonment? And Catherine and I were just talking about this earlier today. It's two-pronged. It's, you know, it's not happening anymore. That's the obvious part. But the second part is was there something actively done to dismantle? And I don't know, it sounds like maybe not. It sounds like maybe the last time that garage was used was for automotive. And since then, Mr. Mayor has either actively been looking for someone or at very least not doing anything to take it out of that use. So if the board is deeming it automotive and those questions are both being answered,
yes.
yeah, right, then potentially it hasn't been discontinued. I guess another way of looking at it though is, or maybe, let's leave it there and I'll be quiet for now.
yeah, because my next question would be, has that garage been rented for any other purpose? Has it continued to be used by Mr. Mayor?
As far as I know, it has continued to be used by Mr. Mayor. And that's just because I know Mr. Mayor. So,
This really isn't an application for a change of use, because it's gonna remain automotive.
I guess so, I guess that's
I
what
mean,
we're
that's
looking
the
at.
heading, so,
Yeah.
okay, so they're gonna continue a use.
yeah.
Okay, so for me, it's all about floor drain.
Well, let's think now, if the board is determining that there isn't a change of use here, where I guess that would seem to indicate that he's done,
Yeah,
It's
that
done.
would indicate that to me too.
and that the addressing the floor drain will happen in another forum, through code enforcement and
Well,
health.
that's a
Yeah.
state, is
Yeah.
that, are you
Well, it's health
referencing a state?
officer,
Sure.
which I am.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're doing here.
No,
Right,
but
right.
it's also
Should-
code
should-
enforcement, no, we're just having this
Yeah.
conversation before.
And I think that that's what needs to be done, so.
Okay.
Just a second. You need to see Al LaPlante, he's the code enforcement officer, and Captain Dawson, who's the health officer,
Mhm.
and work it out. You don't need to
So you won't need site plan review,
Okay.
congratulations.
You didn't want it to be automotive.
I know, she was like, no.
I'm sitting here going,
What? What is he saying?
Okay,
Okay, so, is there an application that I submit to you? No? No?
If-
Just, we sit down and talk.
conversation.
I know you may not want to hear this because you've had to do this a lot in the last few weeks, but if you could just get in touch with me tomorrow, I think we can get you headed in the right direction.
Not a problem.
Okay.
I appreciate your time.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want this,
I'll take that back, actually. Yes.
one of the areas that I had zeroed in on was
Right.
on the commercial
Right.
side and
Okay.
in that particular part.
Okay.
We have no
All right.
correspondence.
All right, good, thank you.
We do have minutes to review. Has everybody had a chance to?
Thank you for
review
your
the
time.
minutes?
Thanks.
Have
Thank
a
you.
night.
Yep.
Good luck.
Okay.
You know what? I forgot my minutes. I still have my other stuff.
Daria, I just wanted to tell you, it's wonderful to get your minutes, because there's not all kinds of corrections, and
Thank you.
we could actually go back to
Very
having minutes as the
professional.
first thing, I believe, on the agenda,
Oh, right.
okay, which came up,
Yeah.
because that's the way it, we're supposed to have a minutes as the first on the agenda,
Oh, right, yeah.
and other planning boards do. And the reason we didn't was because our minutes at one point needed to be close to rewritten. So it took up too much time and it delayed people who were here. So I think it's appropriate that we move them back, Dory, to the beginning of the meeting and get them out of the way, right away. So did everybody have a chance to review the minutes? I did review them. I saw nothing that needed correcting, so I'll make a motion to accept them as written.
I'll second
All in favor?
Abstain.
I haven't read them yet. But that's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? One abstention,
Okay. All right.
okay? And one, whatever she was. Well, she's always got another
Oh,
reading.
reading.
I'm sure the only thing I find would be grammatical, but if you didn't find anything, there's
No,
probably
I'm not
nothing.
grammatical, it's usually punctuation. His grammar's pretty good. All right, if there's no other business,
Was it Richard?
Second,
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
abstain.
You have to stay now.
I got a front row parking spot. I'll try the front
Me
row.
too.
I
I'm the
could've-
black car.
I could
Oh,
have
you're on
got
this
here.
side?
Wait.
I don't know
Oh, I'm
why.
right here.
I didn't want to drive down there feeling so lousy and nothing.
So,
Right on the side of the building.
Oh, you did Jane's spot.
I
It
like,
was
I
empty,
like parking
yeah.
So who would
outside,
have
but-
thought the meeting where you did your presentation was the less stressful of the two meetings you
I
were
know.